Path of Exile 2 Early Access released yesterday, and with that, I streamed it for about 4 hours. 3 hours, I couldn't even log in. What just happened? No. No! But me and all the viewers, thank you guys for tuning into the stream. We persevered. We made it into the game. And I played it for about 2 more hours on stream. I got off, I got some dinner, and I played it probably until 4 or 5 a.m. last night. And in this video, I want to break down everything that I experienced, all of my first impressions, and give an early review of how I am enjoying the game as of right now. And spoiler alert, I fucking love it. But before we get into the video, thank you guys so much for over 850 subscribers. Really appreciate the support on the channel. If you are new to this channel and you like gaming news and gaming reviews, specifically with any RPG type of games or action adventures and games like that, please subscribe and like this video if you guys like what you see here. Now, let's get into the first impressions review. Now, before I even get into all of the glazing that I'm going to do, the glizzy gobbling that I'm going to do in terms of this game, okay, there are some issues here. It's an early access, so these things are to be expected. The launch didn't go incredibly well. We definitely waited about 2.5, almost 3 full hours from when it was supposed to launch to get in the game for various reasons, but they did a great job over at the Grinding Gear Games team to make sure it was a solid experience when they actually did launch the game, so there wasn't a ton of disconnects. I don't think I got disconnected from the server more than maybe 1 time max. However, I will say there was a ton of lag within the game. Away from Buddy. Oh my god, boys, it is so fucking laggy right now. This town is insanely laggy. There's literally a like 7-second delay when I click something to when it actually happens. And this made the game feel a bit buggy from time. On top of this, like the main town specifically was genuinely hard to run around in because it was laggy. It was so laggy, mainly in that town with other players specifically there. I believe the town's called Clearfell. It's the first place that you visit. Now, there's also some other issues aside from the lag that I want to talk about very quickly before I get into what I loved about this game. And the first big thing here is looting. And not looting like you would think, but for me, as a minion build, I have an ability called Unearth, and this targets corpses and turns them into bone scorpions that I can, you know, obviously control to attack enemies, etc. The problem is when there are corpses on the ground after a fight, that Unearth obviously turns into these bone scorpions, and there's loot there at the same time. I can't loot anything on the ground until I turn all of those corpses into bone scorpions first using Unearth. It's really annoying. I'm just trying to loot fucking items and I have to just spend like 10 extra seconds getting everything up and part of my team as bone scorpions before I can loot anything. This might be something that I can find in the settings. I didn't find it. Let me know down below if there is that prioritization in the settings where it prioritizes loot over abilities. Please let me know, but that's something that obviously was very annoying for me going through the game. Another thing here, and again, this might be something that I can change within the settings in terms of highlighting enemies, but it was very hard to distinguish my minions from enemies at times, depending on what enemies I was fighting at any given moment. Especially if I was fighting like undead skeletal type of enemies, and it was a big fight between maybe 10, 12, 15 different enemies, and I was fighting them with my minions. I didn't know just by looking at the screen if my minions were the ones fighting, if my minions were the ones dying, if the enemies were dying. It was hard to tell until about 10-15 seconds into the fight when it got a little bit calmer and there wasn't as many people attacking me. On top of that, I wish I could put minion health bars so I could actually see how low my minions are on health. That's another thing. I don't know if any of these can actually be added into the game. I didn't see them in the settings, so please let me know if I can. But all those were a little bit of annoyances for me specifically. But both of these things I think are just general annoyances, not something that I feel took away greatly from my experience in the game. Because now I want to talk about what I did like about the game and pretty much every other aspect of this game I found very enjoyable. I also want to preface this with, this is by no means coming from a hardcore PoE player. I have put a ton of hours into PoE. I have played through PoE in full with multiple different builds and classes, but I am not a hardcore PoE player. I don't hop in every single season and grind 100 to 200 hours every season. I am just someone who enjoys the game casually. So the first thing you're going to notice when getting on this game, and the first thing I noticed, and it's something Path of Exile, the original game, did very well, was the overall dark fantasy, brutal, very gritty ambiance and environments that it sets you in. And this combines it within this game with some characters that fit that environment really well as the music and the overall ambiance of that, all combining for an amazing and very immersive experience that I personally didn't even want to have a YouTube video up on my side monitor. Usually, in any ARPG, I have a YouTube video up and I'm just blasting as fast as possible to get to the end game. But this game is very different. The way they introduce this world, all the way from the jump, right when you start playing the game, when you choose your class, and all of the other exiles just get immediately hanged and your character escapes, it is just perfect, and it sets this world up in such a great way. Legendary Drop said it best when he said this game was unapologetically authentic, and that ranged true right from the beginning of the game. Now, getting into what most people actually care about when playing an ARPG, the combat. And the combat in this game, I definitely feel is a bit different from Path of Exile 1 and a bit different from a lot of other ARPGs that I have played in the past. It's almost a combination between the Souls-like ARPG No Rest for the Wicked as well as the original Path of Exile. And I say this specifically because the game is slower and more methodical than a lot of the other games within this genre. It also does borrow some Souls-like elements, specifically with the flasks. You don't have multiple different flask slots. You can put different ones in like you did in Path of Exile 1, but you have one for health and you have one for mana, and these will recharge at the well, and it'll also recharge depending on the different things that you have on your flasks in terms of effects or killing enemies, etc. Getting into the actual fighting specifically, you don't just run around the maps as fast as you can, blast everything with a fast move speed and teleport around. That is not how this game feels. This game feels like almost more one fight at a time or one group of enemies at a time, and you really have to learn your abilities and use all of your abilities to make sure you're maximizing your character as much as possible. If my minions are down and I don't have their abilities to use, I am in trouble, and I do have to run away at times or use my bone spikes to stop enemies from coming at me, and have to watch my back in case I run into another group, because then I'm in trouble. But when my minions respawn, I have a pretty good idea of how to play my character, and it revolves in using a lot of different abilities to make sure, like I said, I'm maximizing what I'm able to do for my character. I have my bone spikes if enemies are too close where I can stun them. I have my poison clouds that I can shoot down with my skeletal archers. Once I get some kills with that, I will then use my unearth to summon some bone scorpions, try to turn the fight into my favor. It's almost like a battle of attrition to see how many minions I can get versus how many enemies are attacking me, and can my minions overwhelm them. And then I can use my arsonist to blow up one of my small scorpions to do a big fire AoE. I have my skeletal warriors that are taking aggro, and I boost up their health so they can continue to take aggro while I'm fighting in the backline. I also have my normal auto attack, obviously, that if I'm far away, I can just spam a little bone circle, and then that does some damage. And then I also have my unearth that I can do as I'm killing enemies, like I said, to continue to summon those bone scorpions and use this whole thing as like kind of a rotation. I can also impale one of my skeletons, and then that in turn puts all of my minions into a frenzy to do a lot more damage, to turn a fight, especially if I have a ton of minions that all get frenzied at one time. It's super awesome to see that when it happens. On top of that, I have an ability, it's like a curse that I put down that I don't take more damage. So if I'm trying to run away, I'm using my bone spike, I'm popping that as well. If I don't want my minions to die super fast, I can put that down. There's a lot of different tools that I have at my disposal that I can use in a specific fight. And I don't find myself just spamming one ability over and over again to clear a pack of enemies. I genuinely find myself using all of these different abilities at different times, given the situation that I'm in. Now, how does the combat actually feel? Well, in my opinion, it feels extremely weighty. It feels very impactful, and it has a crunch to it, if that makes any sense, especially with my bone abilities. The sound design and the effects with each skill that you have and with the minion abilities are beautiful, and they fit the world and the total ambiance perfectly, which just immerses you even more and makes the combat feel even more fun. In addition to all of this as well, the enemy variety has been insane. I almost have seen 0 reskins. All of the enemies have very distinct abilities that they're using that you have to tackle in a different way. And again, we're in an ARPG. This is generally something you don't even have to worry about. You can just blast everything in 2 seconds. That is not the way this game is. And I think that actually might turn some fans of the genre off a little bit. Going even further, the bosses. Holy shit. Every boss in this game is probably better, and I'm sorry Diablo 4 fans, than every single Diablo 4 boss that you have fought. Every single one. All of these are better just in Act 1. All of the bosses that I've fought so far have not been reskins and have multiple different mechanics working with them that actually feel like a real boss experience in some other games. Taking even some MMO mechanics and also working that with the ARPG genre, and it feels so damn good. They don't die in just 2 hits. They actually take a long time, some of them a really long time to beat, at least with my build specifically. I don't know how fast other people are crushing these bosses, but they all felt very good. They all felt like actual boss experiences and not something that you can just breeze by and be like, yeah, that was alright. A lot of these bosses also have multiple different phases, which with each phase completely changing their abilities while still sometimes carrying some of their previous abilities. Some move into different rooms and then you have to fight them in a different room. That definitely changes the boss fight dynamic a lot. And again, I'm just talking about Act 1. There are so many different bosses with multiple different phases just in the first act, and that is insane and something I don't think I've seen in this genre to date. There is a boss in this game that you fight it, you get it to 75%, it turns into a wolf. It turns back into the original boss, you get it to 50%, then it turns into an even more overpowered wolf. This overpowered wolf goes to full health and has completely different abilities, maybe 1 or 2 of the same abilities as the previous boss, but it's a completely different boss. And you're fighting this is still the same overall boss fight. It then summons frost all around the map where you have to fight its ads, and it will jump out at you, and you literally have to listen to the game and listen to where the boss is coming from to be able to dodge away from it. And then when you get the boss to 20% health, all of its patterns change and all of its moves even have this extra element added to them as well. They also become faster, they become more impactful. Again, they completely change the kind of pattern that the boss was fighting and using these abilities in as well. It was so fun to learn. I died multiple times, had to go back, continuously progressing on this boss, and then I beat it, and it really felt rewarding, almost like a FromSoft boss that you finally beat after a couple times trying to fight it and learning its different patterns. And listen, some people might not like this. I absolutely loved it because it was such a good combination in terms of using some of those mechanics, bringing them into an ARPG, but keeping that really good Path of Exile feel with how weighty the combat felt as well, and not only learning my character, but also learning the boss patterns, and I absolutely loved it. I cannot even believe what some of the later bosses are going to look like if this was like an end of Act 1 boss. Now, I do really quickly want to touch on the difficulty because this game is not a breeze. Like I said, you don't just blast through maps as fast as possible and blast through bosses. It is not a breeze, and it is actually relatively challenging. But I don't think it's overly difficult like a lot of people were saying. I don't think the pacing, at least so far for me, has been terrible in terms of it getting really easy, going straight to being very hard right all of a sudden. I don't feel like that at all. I genuinely feel like everything is challenging to the point where it just feels more rewarding. The game is slower, the game is more methodical like I said earlier, but I think that plays into the difficulty a lot better than it would if you just blasted through the game and still had low movement speed, for example. I think the difficulty is a way to make you more immersed into the game, make you more immersed into the bosses, make you actually have to learn the game in a way, and I think overall it makes it a much better experience, at least for me, and I am somebody that does like more challenging games. But this thing is nowhere near as hard as the FromSoft games or other games that people tout as extremely hard games. So next I want to talk about the progression in this game, because the progression in Path of Exile 1, at least in my opinion, was very deep, was very complex, but why a lot of people king that game or crown that game as the leader and the king and the best ARPG of all time. But because Path of Exile 1 was very complex and was very in-depth, a lot of people had trouble, at least people that weren't, playing the game on a daily basis or hopping in for every league, a lot of people that just wanted to play it casually did have trouble getting into the game because of how complex these systems were and because of how many different systems there were to progress your character. If you create a character and you don't follow a build guide in PoE 1, you're pretty much just going to brick your character and not even be able to play the end game. This was a big problem for a lot of people that Path of Exile 2 and the team at Grinding Gear Games really tried to improve on and implement on in Path of Exile 2, and I think they did a very good job for a number of reasons. So first off, the skill tree. Now, the skill tree in Path of Exile 2 still offers an infinite number of different passives that you can go down and an infinite different number of ways that you can build your character. But I do think the links are a lot more obvious. I think it's a lot more understandable. I think everything that you get offers your character a lot more benefits in terms of the different choices that you do have. And on top of this, the biggest change that they made to it is you can refund your skills just with gold. You could not do that in the first game. Now, they also reworked how skills work in general. In the first game, you had to put different skills on your gear, and if your gear didn't have these specific links or your gear didn't have the specific slots that you needed for colors to put your skills in, you could not use these skills. Now, in this game, you have a whole separate interface. If you get a skill gem, you can use that skill gem to click the skill that you want or upgrade your skill and then be able to use that. And you also have passive skill gems that you don't have to make sure you are linking specifically to make sure that they're working with the other abilities. You can just put these directly onto the ability that they work with, and it'll tell you what ability they work with. And if it doesn't work with that ability, it won't let you put that on there. Now, I think this is an amazing change. It's a lot more easy to understand for a casual player or a new player to actually get into the game. I think this also allows you to pick up gear that is also going to be better for your character more often. You don't have to rely on the gear you pick up having these specific slots or these specific links. All you have to do is pick up a piece of gear that is good for your character and equip it, and all of the skills are separate from your gear, and this makes you find gear that is actually usable, that is actually beneficial to your character a lot more often. You also have different items like in the first game where you can upgrade your gear and upgrade the quality of your gear. You can add different modifiers on it. You can change the modifiers on it. You have all of that, and they drop more often in this game as well, so you can be using them a lot more as you are actually leveling up in the game as early as Act 1. You also still have your merchants, which they did a really good job of making the merchants actually have items that are going to be usable and good for your character. So they put a lot of work into that. So you still have the gambling merchant where you can gamble your gold for an item, or you can just buy an item outright that's sitting in a shop. I've used both of these numerous times, which I didn't really use in the original Path of Exile, and gotten really good gear that I'm still using that made my character much stronger. And obviously I'm not at the end game yet, so I haven't done the ascension of my character where I really pick the specific subclass that I'm going to be, but you have that progression as well. You have the progression within the specific league mechanics. You'll have the ritual league very early in your game where you kill the different rituals, you kill the main boss, and then you can get gear from that as well. So there are just a ton of different ways to progress your character in this game, even from the jump. And like I said, I think they did a very good job of making it easier to understand for players that aren't used to this type of game. I'm running a minion build, so they also changed up how minions work in this game. So you have a total of 100 spirit at the start of the game. You can actually get more with the different effects on your items and things like that. But on top of this, all of the minions cost a certain amount of spirit, and you have to mix and match to make sure you're maximizing the amount of spirit that you're using at any given time to keep up these permanent buffs or these permanent minions. As you level up your minions, they'll cost less spirit but do more damage, so it's kind of a double upgrade there if you're upgrading those abilities. And I just really like how they're doing it. I think it works really well, and as you get the spirit lower on your minions, you start to get more. You can get way stronger, especially when you start mix and matching your different minions. You're using their abilities and you're comboing those abilities together. It feels really good. I like this change, and I think it works really well. Now, obviously, I'm not at the end of the game, so all of the stuff where I'm talking about not using a build, this and that, could completely change by the end of the game. Now, you do have, like I said, ways to refund the different passives and ways to change up your character to make sure that your character does fit and is strong and can compete in the end game, but we'll have to obviously see when I actually get there. So overall, I've really enjoyed my experience so far. I can't wait to do my full review when I actually get to the end game and see what that's like and beat the campaign and all of that, but I think they've made a lot of very good changes, and I think this was an evolution this genre very much needed that we haven't seen in a very, very long time. And yes, there are some bugs. There is a lot of lag at certain points. There are every once in a while disconnects. I've only experienced experienced one so far. The launch was a little bit rough, but I think they did a great job keeping the community up to date on that and getting it launched and actually being a relatively smooth experience. But a lot of this stuff comes with early access. This is an early access game with a lot more content still to be released. This game specifically with more classes and all of the extra ascendancies, 12 more that they're still going to release here. But like I mentioned, what they've done so far has been absolutely amazing, and I've been having a ton of fun with this game, and I can't wait, like I said, to keep playing it. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe for more, and let me know down in the comments if you guys are enjoying your experience, what you like about it, what you don't like about it, etc. I would love to hear about it and have a discussion down in the comments. See you guys in the next one. Peace!